The Red Shoes and Black Swan are the two most famous ballet movies. Superficially, ballet is the only thing the two films share. From a storytelling perspective, Black Swan and The Red Shoes are night and day. One is a classic golden age quasi-romantic offering, the other is a psychological thriller that flirts cautiously with the horror genre. One has an endearing love story in it, the other has a very postmodern interpretation of sex and what it means to be attractive. And yet, if we sweep away the narrative housing that traps our characters, what we are left with are similar themes regarding obsession, perfectionism, and what it truly means to be free. While Nina in Black Swan and Victoria Page in The Red Shoes are superficially different archetypes, they might actually be the same character. Victoria Page is the archetype princess. She comes from a rich background, vacations in Europe with her aunt, and has had the privilege of learning ballet from a young age. She's not like Nina who needs ballet. Without ballet, Nina is nothing. She has no wealth to speak of. She has no other talents, at least none that are shown on screen. Victoria Page's story in The Red Shoes mirrors the plot of Swan Lake. She has two men in her life. One is the evil sorcerer in the form of Lemontov, the ballet company leader, and the other is Julian Craster, her prince. By the end of The Red Shoes, she will suffer the same fate as the princess in Swan Lake. Leroy, the leader of the ballet company in Black Swan, wants to subvert Swan Lake to make it less like a fairy tale. Nina is a great ballerina, but she's soft-spoken and gentle, qualities that are perfect for a princess. However, she also needs to master the role of the Black Swan, her competitor in the ballet, who steals her prince away. We see Nina struggle to capture the essence of the Black Swan role. We see her descend into a psychological rabbit hole, and in the end we see her sacrifice herself for perfection. These two movies are interwoven, not because the plots are similar, but because Nina is like Victoria Page, just without the money and the ability to vacation in Europe. However, unlike Victoria Page, Nina's dilemma isn't about choosing between the prince and the evil sorcerer. Nina has already made up her mind. Her dilemma in this movie is about innocence and corruption. She cannot continue to be soft-spoken and a princess like Victoria Page. If she's to be a Black Swan, if she's to rise to Leroy's expectations, Nina must shed any pretenses of gentility and royalty. Because The Red Shoes was released in 1948, the obsession that Victoria Page has with ballet doesn't seem unhinged. She genuinely comes off as a ballerina who's doing everything she can to be the principal dancer in the world's most demanding ballet company. Even though she's surrounded by people who demand perfection, she doesn't seem to have the weight of the world on her shoulders. For most of the movie, everyone around her is supportive and are willing to do anything to help her. No one is out to get her. No one is scheming to steal her role. Victoria meets Lemontov at her aunt's party. The aunt is quite rich and had invited Lemontov over so she could show off her ballerina niece. During this party, the philosophy that both Victoria and Lemontov hold regarding life and ballet is laid bare.
Why do you want to dance?
Why do you want to live?
The decisions she makes at the end of the movie, when she's torn between her marriage and ballet, stem from this philosophy. If she cannot dance, she cannot live. If you're in love with art, or if you're an artist, you would understand this feeling. Therefore, Victoria's obsession is arguably healthy if you're willing to ignore the film's tragic conclusion. Nina's obsession is much more concerning. Ballet is her life, nothing but ballet. When Victoria Page says ballet is as essential to her as breathing is, she's referring to the passion, love, and admiration she has for the art. She doesn't mean that nothing in her life is as important as ballet. Nina, though, is not one for compromises. She doesn't have time to do anything that might jeopardize ballet. Her diet, her relationship with her mother, and even her friendships are all optimized for ballet. This obsession is about the right kind of perfection. We already know that Nina is considered perfect for one half of the role, the princess or the white swan. This is not enough though. She has to be twice as perfect. Leroy brings it up constantly. He seems unimpressed with her rendition of the Black Swan. She's not sexy, dangerous, or seductive, qualities that are necessary for the role she wants. During the movie's third act, we see how far Nina is willing to go to acquire the qualities that Leroy exalts. She physically lashes out against her mother, and in the final moments of the film, we found out that her body, which she'd so far treated with great care, was not exempted from this violence. Perfection must be attained. No compromises. Even as she's taking what might be her last breath, perfection is all that Nina thinks about. Victoria and Nina are beautiful dancers, yes, but beauty must be controlled. It's something that Lermontov, the ballet leader in the red shoes, obsesses over. When Irina, the original principal dancer, gets married, Lermontov doesn't even congratulate her. He ignores her and immediately replaces her with Victoria. He does this because once a dancer gets married or falls in love, Lermontov doesn't have absolute control over them. In the case of Victoria, Lermontov falls victim to the one thing he dislikes: mixing romance and ballet. He despises Julian Craster, who has been his best composer, because Julian manages to win Victoria's heart. By the third act, he's lost both Julian and Victoria due to his jealousy, yet he cannot stop himself. He still wishes to control her. In the last minutes of the movie, Victoria has to choose between two forms of control. Julian doesn't want her to dance for Lermontov, and Lermontov doesn't want her to go back to Julian. The two men who mean the most to her wage a battle for her, and unfortunately, both of them lose. Nina's struggle is about who gets to control her personality. Her mother calls her sweet girl and treats her like a child. Leroy wants her to be a sex symbol, a girl that men would desire. He spends most of the movie shaping her, with words and actions, until she becomes who he wants. These two philosophies threaten to rip her mind apart. Nina's speech, her interactions with others, and even her mannerisms are quite childlike. She rarely raises her voice and does her best to avoid confrontations. This is the daughter her mother raised. Submissive, princess-like, doll-like, perfect. This is not the woman Leroy is interested in. Leroy wants her to be more like Lily, another dancer who's freer and more expressive than Nina. In both films, the outcome of this control is the same. The two prima ballerinas are broken. Despite their beauty, despite the length they are willing to go for their art, they are not truly free. In a way, both Victoria Page and Nina choose death as a form of freedom. Nina doesn't know that she chose death though, but her subconscious does. When she finally realizes that she had stabbed herself, instead of calling an ambulance, instead of panicking and running to her mother, she simply goes back to dancing. It's a moment of catharsis for Nina. To truly achieve perfection, she breaks the body that had become a source of control. Her mother was constantly worrying about every little mark and imperfection on it. What's more imperfect than a stab wound? What's more permanent than a few scratches, if not a scar? Victoria can't choose between love or ballet. To choose one and abandon the other would be akin to spiritual death. If she goes back home with Julian, she'll forever regret never having danced another ballet. If she remains with Lermontov and abandons her soulmate, emptiness would overtake her every time she danced. Despite this, she makes a choice. She chooses ballet and immediately regrets it. For a split second, you feel sorry for Julian as he walks away, knowing that Lermontov has beaten him. Then she makes an even more tragic choice, a choice born out of helplessness. Then you feel sorry for both of them as you watch him try to bring her back to life.